Nothing like this has ever happened in history. The White House is now publicly announcing that Donald Trump will host the first crypto summit and will also speak at the White House. The Trump administration has released a document about this that's currently making waves. This could be the next Bitcoin escalation. Or will it be the next zero issue? We'll take a look at what's behind it, because the event is currently being massively hyped and many are also assuming that there's potentially something here with a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Additionally, a very, very important indicator is now signaling that the bottom for Bitcoin has already been reached, and we might bounce back up again. And finally, we have a hot clip from NTV, where it is confirmed that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are betting heavily on Bitcoin, but on the other hand, warnings against it. And here, a lot of misinformation about Bitcoin is being published again. Here's another TV clip that's just way off, a massive blunder. We're also taking a look at this blunder. And here you can see the release from the Trump administration that's currently making waves, straight from the White House and likely approved by Donald Trump. In any case, it says here, just arrived. The White House announces that crypto President Trump, host of the very first crypto summit. Being at the White House and giving a speech there is going to be something else. The event brings together leading crypto CEOs, investors, and members of the Crypto President's Working Group for Digital Assets. So this is intense. This is about digital assets. This is about crypto. When it comes to crypto, it's definitely all about Bitcoin here. I mean, that's always the question. Is this going to be some kind of shitcoin show, or is it going to be a Bitcoin show? I mean, a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts are thinking, hey, something related to a strategic Bitcoin reserve is coming, something similar to Nashville, where he also gave a speech saying, hey, never sell your Bitcoin. Others are saying, hey, this is going to be a total joke. It's just going to be another nothing burger. A lot of hype is being created here, and in the end, nothing happens. I mean, it's already interesting that he's hosting such summits and that he's a speaker here. And I mean, we can speculate a lot right now, but we still have relatively few facts here. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think this is going to be a huge event, like some are calling it out to be? Or do you think it's going to be a total flop? The document also states that the summit will be led by David Sachs, the AI and crypto advisor of the White House. And from Bo Hines, the executive director of the working group, is organizing it. Previously, crypto President Trump promised to be America's first crypto president. In his first week in office, he signed Executive Order 14178, which stated that he explained that it is the policy of my government to support the responsible growth and use of digital assets across all sectors of the economy. So, it's also made very clear here that Donald Trump wants to be the first crypto president. And accordingly, expectations are high when people talk about the USA becoming the new crypto hotspot or Donald Trump being the new one. The new massive crypto president is here. So you're definitely raising the expectations a bit, and we need to keep a close eye on this. I mean, what you can probably expect now is that at least the regulations will start to loosen up a bit. I don't think a strategic Bitcoin reserve or something like that is coming just yet. I mean, maybe they're slowly getting ready for it. But it's likely that the regulations will be loosened a bit. I can totally see that. But the idea that a massive Bitcoin reserve is coming right now, I'm still a bit skeptical about that. And then we had a very, very interesting graphic that's supposed to show that the current Bitcoin bottom is already in. And we're generally trending back up now. Sure, it could still drop by 1, 2, or 3,000 euros or something like that, but generally we've hit the Bitcoin bottom here. Here, Tech Dev is talking about those super viral graphics that are sometimes part of technical analysis and stuff like that. He says, touchdown, oh boy. And here he clearly shows that the bottom is in and that we're going back up now. I should also mention that this isn't my opinion, but rather the analysis from this analyst. The tweet here refers to a chart that shows Bitcoin cycles in comparison to the global economic cycle. And we see here that the current cycle seems to have reached a low point, or as he puts it, a touchdown similar to previous years like 2015, 2019, and now 2023. And if the pattern repeats itself, this could signal the start of a new Bitcoin rally. You can always see the economic cycles or the business cycles that tend to last around 4 years, or maybe a bit longer. Yeah, it's actually about 4 years, but the cycle tends to stretch out a bit longer here. And some say that this is actually much more important than the Bitcoin hold because of the global business or economic cycle. And that is about to make a turn here. And accordingly, Bitcoin is now also on the verge of a turn here. And now we're heading into the next bull phase. You always have to look at this a little critically because the past rhymes, but sometimes doesn't repeat itself. I mean, if you just assume that everything will repeat like it did in the past, then it could very well be that this is the new trend reversal. But we always have to be a bit skeptical. We also need to consider other indicators. There's just one indicator that's currently signaling bullish. We also need to assess the whole situation globally. For example, if anything were to escalate between the USA, Ukraine, Russia, or something like that. I mean, then we can just throw the economic cycle out the window if there's a war or other major conflicts, or if there are any more issues with tariffs or something like that. Then Bitcoin could also drop by 20% or so at any time. There was also a very interesting assessment from David Bailey. I reported yesterday that BlackRock is now including their own Bitcoin ETFs in the model portfolios. So 1 to 2% allocation. And I wasn't even aware of how large the assets under management of the model portfolios are. I actually thought they would be a bit smaller, but now David Bailey is actually bringing this to light. What's really, really interesting has come to light, and he says here that the total assets under management are 5 trillion in the model portfolios. And if we take a 2% allocation there, then that amounts to 100 billion that are flowing into Bitcoin as new inflows. And here David Bailey also says, I can't emphasize enough how big this news is. Just to add this, it's really, really important. And now let's actually take a look at NTV, because here's a brand new hot clip that just came out. We've seen it time and again that the media really goes after Bitcoin with false reporting and sometimes shady news. This will be published here. And now we have a new clip from NTV that actually fits right into that pattern. That means it also ties back to the past where we keep seeing these kinds of clips. I mean, there are still a few interesting things being shared, but just take it all in, and then I'll give you a little assessment. And it's really, really crazy what's going on here in mainstream TV. And that's why it's so important, for example, to subscribe to alternative media like this YouTube channel. So make sure to hit that subscribe button down below so we can really pick up some momentum here. And that people are really getting informed about Bitcoin here and not just being framed negatively like here at NTV. I mean, it starts off pretty well, but then just wait until the end. It gets really, really bad.
Donald Trump is convinced Bitcoin is the future. Tesla CEO Elon Musk is also betting on cryptocurrency. But a new study from the German Institute for Economic Research shows that Bitcoin is not a safe haven. On the contrary, while gold provides stability in times of crisis, the Bitcoin price fluctuates wildly and tends to follow the stock markets.
That means, if you want to set up your portfolio in a way that generates positive returns independent of the stock markets, then it's better to hold stocks and, for example, gold rather than stocks and Bitcoin.
A look at the developments over the past few years makes that clear. Highs, but also deep lows. Especially in times of crisis, the Bitcoin price often drops along with the stock markets. But can Bitcoin be an alternative to gold? Financial experts are skeptical.
For investors who can handle fluctuations, it's definitely an alternative. Is Bitcoin limited like gold? Accordingly, I don't have any inflationary effects because of that. But I have a long tradition with gold at this point. We know that I can hold it in my hand. And accordingly, for conservative investors who often turn to gold, it's certainly not an alternative.
According to the study, Bitcoin is also not suitable as a currency reserve for states. And yet the group remains. Cryptocurrency is fascinating for many, especially with the hope of hitting it big.
It's always amazing what kind of studies come out. That means you really have to look at it that way. Nowadays, it is sometimes the case that studies are simply there to confirm our worldview. That means if someone thinks Bitcoin is crap, they'll commission a study to prove that Bitcoin is really, really bad. In times of crisis, it's not a safe haven, and Bitcoin generally has a massively high correlation with the stock markets, which makes Bitcoin a really bad investment because it just keeps going down during those crises. And in such studies, they conveniently leave out that Bitcoin has been the best performing asset over the last 15 years. They leave out that Bitcoin has also always bounced back the fastest from such crises. And what is also left out is that in good times, when the risk-on mode is on, Bitcoin has a massive outperformance. That means, generally over a longer period of time, over a 2-year period, over a 3-4 year period, Bitcoin has massively outperformed everything. Sure, if you zoom into the chart and look at it on a 2 or 3 week basis, if there's some conflict, like Trump saying something about tariffs or the Middle East conflict or whatever, if something happens, then Bitcoin initially goes down with it, and Bitcoin might also drop along with the stock markets. That may be true, but you simply can't ignore the bigger picture. And that's exactly what happens in the studies, that studies are often published just to confirm one's own ideology. That one simply says, hey, stocks are better, gold is better, that's always worked and it has to be that way. But one simply neglects the facts that Bitcoin has performed much better than stocks. Bitcoin has performed much better than gold, Bitcoin has performed much better than a savings account, and so on. And how can you then conclude that Bitcoin is a really, really bad investment? I don't know, I just never get it. There has to be some kind of framing going on. I don't know if there are any powers behind it that might have an interest in Bitcoin not profiting, or that it might be downgraded. Or maybe there are some gold interest stocks or whatever that want to sell their own gold or something like that. It's also mentioned that there's a study claiming Bitcoin isn't a good reserve asset or anything like that. But there are literally zero arguments for that. And the standard argument that often comes up is, yeah, Bitcoin is too volatile for a strategic reserve. But that is completely irrelevant, because if you have a reserve, a strategic gold reserve, a strategic Bitcoin reserve, then you don't hold it for 2 weeks, but for 20 years or 30 years. And every Bitcoin investor knows that in the long run, volatility is almost irrelevant because Bitcoin just keeps trending upward over the long term. And this is just a misrepresentation, at least in my opinion. Please write to me in the comments if I'm wrong, because here only a very small part is being presented. And here with gold, some gold expert comes along and says, yes, Bitcoin is not for any traditional investors because you can't hold Bitcoin in your hand and Bitcoin is not physical and Bitcoin has no history. But what gets left out is that Bitcoin is way more divisible, it scales way better, and it's much easier to break down into smaller units. Plus, Bitcoin is way scarcer than gold. That Bitcoin has many more properties compared to gold that are superior. And you don't always have to pit Bitcoin against gold. So you could also say, hey, just have gold and Bitcoin or have gold and stocks. But then they always play it off against each other. And they say, no, Bitcoin is bad because you can't hold it in your hand. You have to look at it positively too. It's actually an advantage because it's not physical. It's basically a storage of information. That means we have an asset in the form of information, in the form of 24 words. If we have those in our heads, we can walk across a border naked. We have massive flexibility, and we can store billions within that information. We have 24 words, and we can store billions, even trillions, in there. We could potentially walk across borders naked, and no one can censor us, take it away, or anything like that. And with gold, it's not like that. With gold, we have something physical. And yes, you can see that as an advantage. But you also have to see the other side, that there's a certain disadvantage to it as well. I know so many people, or actually I don't know that many people. But finally I talked to a Syrian who, wow, that was 9 months ago or so ago when I was still in Germany. He said that he somehow escaped from Syria across the border and then somehow got to Germany, a really cool and nice guy. But he said that his whole family, they took all of his gold bars from him at the border because they slid open his pockets. They had all of the gold bars stashed in their jackets and they had to get out of the country somehow. It was simply not possible to take the gold with them. It was taken away from them and then they were basically released again. And something like that is just not so easy to do with Bitcoin. And you always have to mention that too. Just hacking against Bitcoin and only listing the negative aspects while completely ignoring the positives really leaves a bad taste. But on the other hand, you can also be really glad that there are still such reports. But if we did not have such false claims, such unfinished reports, such incorrect reports, if we had massively good reports, only positive reports, only accurate reports about Bitcoin, that would also be an indicator that we are much further along in the cycle, maybe even close to mainstream adoption. That means they are always indicators. You can really do that, like we looked at that one indicator earlier. You can also watch clips like these TV clips and use them as indicators. Okay, where are we right now? If there is a lot of positive reporting, then we are probably at a peak because then the Bitcoin price is relatively high. When there's more negative coverage, then we're actually more, let's say, at the bottom. So maybe the stock market is like that right now or something because the price always drives the news, not the other way around. And on the other hand, we can also take the scale and say, okay, we have reports on one side that are really, really good, meaning very accurate, and reports on the other side that are really, really flawed. And as long as we still have a lot of incorrect reports, we know that the knowledge has not really reached the people yet. There is still a lot of uncertainty. It might not even be intentional, the way the report is written. It could just be pure ignorance that's present in the report. And as long as we still have a lot of flawed reports, we're still very early in the adoption curve. That also means we still have a massive upside ahead. That we have an information asymmetry here. We have information here that hasn't even reached the mainstream yet. And that's why Bitcoin is massive, cheap, currently, possibly, if we look at it on a 10-year scale. Michael Saylor put it really well once. He said, "You need an asset that everyone needs, but no one understands." And that's exactly the case here, like with NTV here, that nobody understands, but at the same time, nobody can ban it and nobody can stop it. And this combination together is Bitcoin. And that's why it's a very, very good investment opportunity. And if you want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll give you a link below. 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily, safely, and simply buy Bitcoin with the code. You can save up to 20% on fees when buying Bitcoin. Guys, see you later. Peace out.